My name is Lenora Jefferson, and at 67 years old, I never thought my own flesh and blood would try to kill me. After selling my company for $58 million, I wanted to celebrate with my only son Bradford and his wife Amanda. We were at La Maison, the finest restaurant in Boston, when they excused themselves to dance. That's when the security guard leaned in and whispered words that shattered my world. I saw him pour something into your juice. Before you continue watching, let me know where you're tuning in from, and click that subscribe button if my story resonates with you. The path that led me to that fateful night at La Maison began 35 years earlier. I was only 32 when my husband Thomas died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving me a widow with a 7-year-old son and a small pharmaceutical supply business that was barely staying afloat. Those early days were a blur of grief, determination, and endless cups of coffee, as I taught myself every aspect of the business while also trying to be both mother and father to little Bradford. Our little apartment above the warehouse became our sanctuary. Every night after putting Brad to bed, I'd spread financial statements across the kitchen table, learning through trial and error. The pharmaceutical industry was dominated by men who didn't take me seriously, but I was too stubborn to fail. I remember one supplier laughing when I asked for credit terms. 6 months later, when I became his biggest customer, the laughter stopped. Brad and I were inseparable in those early years. He'd sit at a tiny desk I set up in my office coloring or doing homework while I made sales calls. On weekends, we'd pack picnics and head to the park, our special time together. I can still hear his childish giggles as we fed ducks at the pond, his small hand trustingly in mine. But as the business grew, so did the demands on my time. Jefferson Medical Supply expanded from a local operation to regional, then national. Each expansion meant more travel, more late nights, more responsibilities. I hired nannies, arranged playdates, enrolled Brad in the best schools, believing I was securing his future. What I didn't realize was that money was becoming a substitute for presence. By his teenage years, I noticed the changes in Brad. The warm, curious boy was becoming entitled and distant. When he wanted the newest gaming system that cost $400, I bought it without hesitation. When he crashed his first car 3 months after getting his license, I replaced it with a newer model. Each problem solved with money seemed to create distance between us. "Mom, everyone at Westlake Academy has their own credit card," he argued at 15. "It's embarrassing to be the only one who has to ask for money." I gave him the card setting what I thought was a reasonable limit. He maxed it out in 2 weeks. Despite these warning signs, I believed Bradford would mature with time. He was accepted to Wharton for business school, and I felt a surge of pride. My son would follow in my footsteps, perhaps even take over the company someday. I paid his tuition, his apartment, his expenses, never questioning the growing amounts. It was during his second year at Wharton that he met Amanda Pierce. When he brought her home during spring break, my first impression was of striking beauty paired with calculating eyes. She complimented my home excessively, asked pointed questions about the business valuation, and showed more interest in my jewelry collection than in family photos. "Your mother is just fascinating, Brad," she said over dinner, her hand possessively on his arm. "Building an empire while raising you alone. You must have inherited her business acumen." Brad beamed under her attention, but something in her tone made me uneasy. Still, I smiled and poured more wine. What mother doesn't want to believe the best about the woman her son loves? Their courtship was brief. By graduation, they were engaged, and Brad insisted on a wedding at the Langham Hotel that cost more than what most people spend on a house. I wrote the checks, ignoring the way Amanda's eyes lit up when discussing the budget. At the reception, I overheard her tell a bridesmaid, "The Jefferson money makes up for his other shortcomings." I pretended not to hear. After the wedding, things changed rapidly. Brad had joined the company as VP of Business Development, a title I created hoping he would learn the ropes. Instead, he delegated most work to assistants, while taking extended lunches and leaving early for golf. Amanda redecorated their new home 3 times in 2 years each time, with more expensive tastes. The distance between us grew. Sunday family dinners became monthly, then quarterly. When they did visit, conversations centered around their luxury vacations, country club memberships, or Amanda's latest jewelry acquisition. Bradford never asked about the business anymore, except to inquire about quarterly profits or dividend distributions. Then came the day I decided to sell. After 35 years, arthritis was making my hands stiff, and the industry was changing faster than I could adapt. A multinational corporation had been courting me for years, offering increasingly generous terms. At 67, I was ready for a new chapter. The day I announced my intention to sell, Brad and Amanda invited me to dinner for the first time in months. Suddenly, they were calling daily, dropping by the office, showing interest in my life. Brad asked detailed questions about the sales structure, valuation methods, and payout terms. "Will it be a lump sum payment, Mom?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Or installments?" "Have you updated your will recently?" Amanda chimed in, refilling my wine glass. "With such a significant asset conversion, you really should." I told myself their sudden attention was natural concern for family finances, but in quiet moments, doubt crept in. Why had Bradford never shown interest in the actual business operations, only the money they generated? Why did Amanda's questions always circle back to inheritance structures? When the sale finalized at $58 million, I felt both elation and loss. The company had been my life's work, my identity. That night, alone in my home office, surrounded by emptied filing cabinets, I cried for the first time since Thomas died. The next morning, Brad called suggesting we celebrate at La Maison, Boston's most exclusive restaurant. "You deserve it, Mom," he said, his voice warm, with what I desperately wanted to believe was genuine affection. "Let me take care of everything." I should have listened to the unease rising in my chest, but maternal hope is a powerful blinder. I wanted so badly to believe my son loved me for more than my bank account that I ignored every warning sign along the way. That decision nearly cost me my life. La Maison wasn't my style. With its crystal chandeliers, gold-rimmed plates, and waitstaff that moved like choreographed dancers, it felt more like a performance than a meal. I'd have preferred Giovanni's, the family-owned Italian restaurant, where Thomas and I had celebrated our anniversaries. But Bradford had insisted, saying nothing but the best would do for this occasion. "Mom, you look stunning," Amanda gushed as the maitre d' led us to our table centrally located where other diners could see us. Her eyes flicked to my simple black dress, which I'd worn to countless business dinners, then to my understated pearl necklace. "Though we should go shopping soon. With your new status, you'll need a proper wardrobe." Brad pulled out my chair with unusual attentiveness. "Amanda's right. You could afford anything at Bergdorf's now." The way he said afford sent a small chill through me. The table was already set with champagne flutes. Before I could even settle into my seat, Brad was pouring Dom Perignon with a flourish. To the most successful businesswoman I know, he toasted his smile, not quite reaching his eyes. And to family, Amanda added her red-painted nails, tapping against the crystal, the most important asset of all. A waiter appeared instantly at Bradford's subtle hand gesture. "We'll have the chef's tasting menu," my son announced, without consulting me. "And bring my mother the special cranberry juice cocktail I arranged earlier. She prefers not to have alcohol tonight." I opened my mouth to correct him. I had been looking forward to a glass of my favorite Pinot Noir, but Amanda smoothly interrupted. "Lenora, I adore that bracelet. Is it new?" Her hand caught mine, effectively silencing my objection about the drink. As the conversation progressed, I noticed a pattern. Every time I tried to discuss my plans for retirement, traveling to countries, I'd always wanted to visit volunteering with pharmaceutical access programs in underserved communities, maybe even writing a memoir Brad or Amanda would. Redirect. "Those sound like wonderful hobbies," Amanda said dismissively. "But have you considered your living situation? That big house must be so lonely and difficult to maintain." Brad nodded eagerly. "We've been thinking, Mom. Our guest house is sitting empty. It would be perfect for you, close enough for us to check on you daily, but still giving you independence." "Check on me," I repeated, taken aback. "I'm perfectly capable of living on my own." "Of course you are," now Amanda soothed, exchanging a quick glance with Brad. "But at your age, things can change quickly. Prevention is better than reaction." Throughout the appetizer course, they tag-teamed their persuasion. The guest house would be safer. I wouldn't have to worry about maintenance. They could monitor my medication schedule. Each suggestion came wrapped in concern but felt increasingly suffocating. When the waiter brought my special cranberry juice cocktail, Brad watched intently as it was placed before me. The drink was an unusual color, darker than normal cranberry juice, with an almost metallic sheen in the restaurant's dim lighting. "Try it," Mom, Brad urged, strangely focused on my reaction. "The mixologist created it specially for you." I raised the glass, noticing how Brad leaned forward slightly. Before I could take a sip, Amanda suddenly laid her hand on Bradford's arm. "Oh, they're playing our song," she exclaimed, though I couldn't recall ever hearing the melody before. "Brad, we have to dance. You promised." My son looked momentarily conflicted, glancing between me and the untouched drink. "We'll just be a few minutes, Mom. Enjoy your cocktail while it's properly chilled." As they walked to the small dance floor, I watched their body language. Amanda was whispering urgently in Brad's ear, his face tense with concentration. Over her shoulder, his eyes kept darting back to our table, to my drink. I sat alone, the untouched cocktail before me, reviewing the evening's strange undercurrents. The controlled conversation, the insistence on this restaurant, the special drink I hadn't requested, the dance that seemed timed precisely when my drink arrived. For the first time, I allowed myself to acknowledge the pattern of behavior that had been building since the sale announcement. My son and his wife weren't celebrating my achievement. They were circling like vultures, waiting for something. That's when I felt a presence beside me. A tall man in a discreet security uniform had approached so quietly, I hadn't noticed him. He bent down as if checking something near my chair, and whispered words that would forever divide my life into before and after. "Ma'am, I'm Michael from security. I saw him pour something into your juice when his wife distracted the waiter. Don't drink it. Don't let them know I told you." He straightened and walked away before I could respond, disappearing into the restaurant's shadows as quickly as he'd appeared, leaving me frozen with a truth I didn't want to believe. The security guard's words echoed in my mind as I stared at the dark cranberry cocktail. "I saw him pour something into your juice." My first instinct was denial, not my Bradford. Not the little boy who'd once made me handprint Mother's Day cards and cried when he accidentally stepped on an ant. There had to be a mistake. But as I watched Brad and Amanda swaying on the dance floor, other memories surfaced. Fragments of incidents I'd dismissed individually now formed a disturbing mosaic. 3 weeks ago, I'd walked into Bradford's home office to borrow a phone charger and found him quickly closing his laptop. Before the screen went dark, I glimpsed what looked like an insurance document with my name on it. When I asked what he was working on, he claimed it was a surprise retirement gift. Last month, Amanda had asked unusually detailed questions about my medication regimen for arthritis. I read that timing can affect efficacy, she'd explained, with sudden pharmaceutical interest. Later that week, I noticed my pill organizer seemed rearranged, though I'd attributed it to my own forgetfulness. There were the whispered phone conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. The financial advisor, Amanda, had coincidentally bumped into who specialized in inheritance management. Bradford's insistence on accompanying me to medical appointments, something he'd never shown interest in before. Just last week, Brad had asked if my will was stored at home or with my attorney. Just in case we ever need to reference it in an emergency, he'd explained with a casualness that now seemed rehearsed. I looked down at my hands, the same hands that had once cradled Bradford as an infant, and felt them trembling. The security guard had no reason to lie. My son, however, had 58 million reasons. On the dance floor, I noticed Brad checking his watch and whispering something to Amanda. Their dance was ending. I had perhaps 2 minutes to decide how to respond. Confront them immediately. Pretend everything was normal. Call the police. My business instincts took over. In negotiations, information was power. Acting on incomplete information was how deals were lost. I needed evidence, not just suspicion. I needed to understand what I was facing without alerting them that I knew. I took out my compact mirror, pretending to check my makeup while actually watching them approach. Brad's face was tense, his eyes immediately going to my still full glass. Amanda's smile seemed stretched too tight across her face. "You haven't tried your drink," Brad observed as they returned an odd note in his voice. I forced a smile. "I was waiting for you both. It seemed a shame to start without you." Amanda slid into her chair. "How thoughtful, but please don't wait on our account." Her eyes met Brad's briefly. "Actually," I said, setting my napkin on the table, "would you mind if I use the restroom first? The excitement of the evening has caught up with me." Brad's face flickered with something like annoyance before smoothing into concern. "Of course, Mom. Are you feeling all right?" "Just a little overwhelmed," I assured him, standing slowly. "All this change at once. I'll be right back." As I walked away, I glanced back to see Brad staring at my untouched drink with unmistakable anxiety. Amanda was whispering furiously in his ear. In the elegant sanctuary of the restroom, I locked myself in a stall and tried to control my breathing. The pieces were aligning in a pattern I couldn't bear to recognize. My only child, my Bradford. The boy I'd sacrificed everything for. Was he really capable of this level of betrayal? I recalled a conversation from just after the sale announcement. Brad had asked about the timing of the payout. Will you have access immediately? Or is there a waiting period? When I'd mentioned the funds would be available within days, his eyes had lit up with naked eagerness. What if the security guard was wrong? What if this was all a terrible misunderstanding? But even as I grasped at alternatives, my mind calculated probabilities like I'd done countless times in business. The evidence was pointing in one direction. I washed my hands, slowly buying time. In the mirror, my reflection showed a woman I barely recognized. Beneath my carefully applied makeup, my face was pale with shock. My eyes held the wounded look of ultimate betrayal. As I returned to the main dining room, I took a circuitous path that allowed me to pass near Brad and Amanda without them seeing me. They were huddled in urgent conversation, unaware of my approach. How long before it takes effect? Amanda was asking, her voice low but intense. 20 minutes, maybe 30, Brad replied. But she has to drink it first. Why is she being so difficult tonight? We need this to happen now, Amanda hissed. The closing documents cleared today. She has access to everything. If she changes her mind about the guest house arrangement... I know what's at stake, Brad snapped. The casino debt collector called again. They're not going to wait much longer. Amanda's face hardened. We need this to look natural. The inheritance has to come through soon or we'll lose everything. She trusts me, Brad said, and the confidence in his voice as he discussed my manipulation cut deeper than any knife. She always has. I retreated silently, my world collapsing around me. There was no more room for doubt. My son and his wife were actively plotting against me, possibly planning my death, certainly planning to control my assets. The security guard had saved my life with his warning. I returned to the table with the practiced smile I'd used in countless difficult business meetings. I'm feeling a bit lightheaded, I announced. I think I need some fresh air. Brad half rose from his chair. I'll come with you. No, I said firmly. Please stay and enjoy your meal. I just need 15 minutes alone to clear my head. It's been an overwhelming day. Amanda put her hand on Brad's arm, pulling him back into his seat. Let your mother have some space, Brad. We'll be right here when she gets back. The relief on their faces told me everything. They thought I suspected nothing. They would wait for my return, try again with another drink, another method. They had no idea that I was walking away not just from the table but from them forever. 15 minutes, I promised with a smile that cost me everything to maintain. I'll be right back. It was the last lie I would ever tell my son, and the most important truth I would ever tell myself. Outside La Maison, the cool evening air hit my face like a slap of reality. I walked around the corner out of sight from the restaurant's front windows and leaned against the brick wall. My hands were shaking so badly I could hardly operate my phone. I had 15 minutes, perhaps less, before Brad and Amanda would grow suspicious. 15 minutes to dismantle the life I thought I had and create a new one based on the terrible truth I'd discovered. My first call was to Josephine Winters, my attorney for over 20 years, and one of the few people I trusted completely. She answered on the second ring. Josephine, it's Lenora, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I need your help immediately. I believe Bradford and Amanda are attempting to poison me. There was a brief silence. Are you certain? She finally asked, no hint of disbelief in her tone. Josephine had seen enough family wealth disputes to know money could corrupt even the closest bonds. A security guard witnessed Brad putting something in my drink. I overheard them discussing their plan. They have gambling debts. They're waiting for me to die so they can inherit. Each sentence felt like ripping out a piece of my heart. Where are you now? Josephine's voice was crisp with professional urgency. Outside La Maison restaurant. They think I'm getting air and will return in 15 minutes. Don't go back inside, she ordered. I'm calling Detective Rivera now. He worked that fraud case for us last year. Go to the Wentworth Hotel across the street. Check in under your maiden name, Lenora Clark. I'll meet you there within the hour with Rivera. My purse is still at the table, I realized. My ID, credit cards. Use this credit card number, Josephine said, reciting digits from an emergency account she maintained for clients. The hotel knows me. Tell them it's a Winters client matter. Go now, Lenora. As I ended the call, a figure appeared beside me, causing me to jump. Ma'am, I'm Michael Donovan, the security guard said gently. I wanted to make sure you're okay. In the streetlight, I could see him more clearly, mid-50s, with kind eyes that had likely seen too much in his line of work. Why did you warn me? I asked. I'm retired, Boston PD. 20 years in homicide makes you recognize certain behaviors, he explained. The way they were acting set off every alarm bell. When I saw him slip something from his pocket into your drink while his wife distracted the server, well, I couldn't stay silent. My voice caught. You saved my life. Michael shook his head. I just gave you information. You saved your own life by listening to your instincts. Most people would have dismissed my warning or confronted them immediately. I need to preserve evidence, I said, business acumen taking over. That drink? Already handled, Michael assured me. I spoke with the manager after warning you. The glass has been secured without their knowledge. Restaurant security cameras will have footage of the table. He handed me a business card. My cell number. I'll be a witness if needed. Tears pricked my eyes, not for Bradford now, but for this stranger's kindness. Thank you. Michael nodded solemnly. Ma'am, if I may, don't go home tonight. If they're desperate enough to try this in public. I'm going somewhere safe, I assured him. My attorney is meeting me. Good. He glanced at his watch. You should go. They'll be getting suspicious soon. I took one last look toward La Maison, its warm lights now seeming sinister rather than welcoming. Somewhere inside, my son was waiting for me to return and drink poison he had prepared. The son I had carried, raised, loved, sacrificed for. The boy whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose nightmares I had soothed, whose education I had funded without question. The weight of this betrayal threatened to crush me where I stood. But decades of fighting to survive in business had made me resilient. I squared my shoulders and walked away, not running, not hiding, but moving with purpose towards self-preservation. At the Wentworth Hotel, the night manager recognized Josephine's name immediately and processed my room without asking questions. Within 40 minutes, Josephine arrived with Detective Rivera, his weathered face grave as I recounted the evening's events. We'll obtain the drink for analysis, Rivera said, making notes. The restaurant security footage will be crucial. Mr. Donovan's testimony adds credibility. But Mrs. Jefferson, I need to ask, are there financial motives here? I laughed bitterly. 58 million of them. The company's sale just closed. Bradford is my primary heir. Josephine placed her hand over mine. We need to make immediate changes to protect you legally and financially. For the next 2 hours, we worked methodically. Josephine drafted emergency documents revoking Bradford's power of attorney and removing him as my healthcare proxy. We froze certain accounts and created new ones Bradford couldn't access. Detective Rivera arranged for security footage collection and discreet surveillance on Bradford and Amanda. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from Bradford. Mom, where are you? We're worried. Are you okay? Please call us. We've looked everywhere. Should we call hospitals? Mom, please respond. We're frantic. The escalating concern in his messages might have seemed genuine to anyone else. To me, each word now read like calculated manipulation. When my phone rang for the 12th time, Detective Rivera nodded. Answer it. Act normal. Say you're safe but needed space. Don't confront him. I took a deep breath and answered. Bradford, I'm fine. Mom, relief flooded his voice so convincingly I almost doubted myself. Almost. Where are you? We've been terrified. Something happened. I just needed some time alone, I said carefully. The celebration was overwhelming. I'm staying with a friend tonight. Which friend? His voice sharpened. I'll come get you. That's not necessary, I replied, matching his tone. I'm a grown woman, Bradford. I can manage one night away. But your medication? He began. I have everything I need, I cut him off, remembering his earlier words about my medicine schedule. How long had he been planning this? I'll call you tomorrow. After hanging up, I turned to Josephine and Rivera. What now? Now we investigate, Rivera said grimly. Financial records, communications backgrounds. If they tried once, there might be previous attempts or planning we can document. Josephine squeezed my hand. And we protect you. Physically, legally, financially. Later, alone in my hotel room, I sat by the window looking out at Boston's twinkling lights. The city seemed unchanged, yet everything was different. My son had tried to kill me tonight. The reality of that fact kept hitting me in waves of disbelief and anguish. I thought of the little boy who once declared he was going to marry me when he grew up, because I was the best lady in the world. The teenager who'd grudgingly hugged me at school drop-offs, but still whispered, "Love you, Mom." The young man who'd placed the graduation tassel in my hand saying, "This is because of you." Where had that boy gone? Had the love ever been real? Or had I been nothing but a resource to him all along? Sleep was impossible that night. Instead, I watched the sky lighten with dawn, marking my first day in a world where I could no longer trust the person I'd loved most. But as the sun rose, so did my resolve. Bradford had underestimated me once. He wouldn't get a second chance. The days following my escape from La Maison unfolded like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Under Josephine's guidance, I moved into a secure apartment building with 24-hour security. Detective Rivera assigned an officer to remain nearby, though discreetly we didn't want Bradford to know he was under investigation yet. I hired Margaret Sullivan, a private investigator Josephine recommended to dig deeper into Bradford and Amanda's lives. "I need to understand what I'm dealing with," I explained during our first meeting. "Not just the poison attempt, but everything, no matter how painful the truth is." Margaret, a former FBI agent with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor, nodded. "The truth is always better than uncertainty, Mrs. Jefferson, even when it hurts." That philosophy was tested severely as her findings began coming in. Bradford and Amanda's finances were in shambles, despite the generous salary and bonuses I'd provided. Credit card debt, exceeding $300,000, 2 mortgages on their home, loans against luxury vehicles, and most disturbing documented gambling debts to several casinos totaling nearly $2 million. Amanda appears to be the primary gambler, Margaret reported, showing me casino records, high-stakes poker mainly, but Bradford co-signed all the markers. They've received several threatening communications from collectors. Each revelation felt like another nail in the coffin of the relationship I'd thought we had. But worse was yet to come. 4 days after the restaurant incident, Detective Rivera arrived with a folder marked "Confidential." The lab results came back on the drink, he said, his expression grim. It contained a substantial dose of ethylene glycol mixed with anticoagulants. "In English, please," I requested, though part of me already knew. "Antifreeze essentially combined with blood thinners," Rivera explained. "It's a particularly dangerous combination. The ethylene glycol causes kidney failure while appearing similar to alcohol intoxication. The anticoagulants would prevent blood clotting, causing internal bleeding. Someone familiar with pharmaceuticals might know this interaction." The precision of the attempt made my blood run cold. "Bradford worked in pharmaceutical sales briefly during college summers," I whispered. Rivera nodded soberly. "The amount in your drink would likely have been fatal, especially to someone of your age and weight. With your arthritis medication, death would have been nearly certain." I closed my eyes, absorbing the reality that my son hadn't merely wanted to control my assets, he had wanted me dead. "What about Amanda's background?" I asked, when I could speak again. "That's where things get even more concerning," Rivera replied, opening the folder. "Amanda Pierce wasn't always Amanda Pierce." The documents revealed that Amanda had changed her name at 24 from Amanda Delaney. Under her original identity, she'd been investigated, though never charged in connection with the suspicious death of an elderly man named Walter Greening. Walter had been her employer, a wealthy widower who died, leaving Amanda a substantial sum. The medical examiner had noted unusual levels of sedatives in Walter's system, but without conclusive evidence of foul play, the case was never pursued. "There's more," Rivera continued. "Before meeting Bradford, Amanda was briefly engaged to Martin Hoffman, another wealthy older man, who died unexpectedly. Again, no charges were filed, but the pattern is concerning." The room seemed to tilt around me. "Are you saying Amanda has done this before?" "We can't prove it legally," Rivera said carefully, "but I'm concerned enough that we've reopened investigations into both deaths." Margaret Sullivan's investigation produced additional disturbing findings. Bradford and Amanda had taken out a substantial life insurance policy on me 6 months earlier, listing Bradford as sole beneficiary. My son had also been researching natural poisons and inheritance laws on his laptop searches. Margaret recovered from cloud backups. Most damning was a draft document found in Bradford's email, prepared to transfer all my assets to a trust he would control immediately upon my death. The document had been created just days after the sale announcement. Josephine, who had become not just my attorney but my lifeline through this ordeal, reviewed everything with her characteristic thoroughness. "We have enough for criminal charges," she concluded. "Attempted murder conspiracy, possibly fraud? The question is, are you prepared for what that means, Lenora? A public trial, your son potentially going to prison. Everything exposed." The question haunted me for days. Part of me, the mother who remembered rocking Bradford to sleep with lullabies, wanted to run away, change my name, disappear, rather than see him face consequences. Another part, the businesswoman who had survived decades of cutthroat competition, knew that sentiment was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not when my life was at stake. 1 week after the restaurant incident, Bradford escalated his efforts to locate me. He filed a missing person report, claiming I was suffering from confusion and possible dementia. He gave tearful interviews to local news, portraying himself as a concerned son, desperate to find his vulnerable mother who had wandered off after a celebration dinner. "He's trying to establish groundwork for questioning your mental competence," Josephine observed, as we watched his performance on television. "If he can convince authorities you're mentally impaired, he could petition for guardianship." That was the final straw. The manipulation, the lies, the public charade of concern, while privately plotting my death, it was time to end this. "Set up the meeting," I told Josephine. "I want to see their faces when they realize they've failed." 2 days later, Bradford and Amanda received a call from Josephine's office, inviting them to discuss developments in Lenora's estate planning given my extended absence. The meeting was set for the following morning. That night, I barely slept. Tomorrow I would confront the two people who had betrayed me most profoundly. I would look into my son's eyes and see either remorse or callousness. Either way, I would lose him, had already lost him truthfully, though I was only now accepting it. As dawn broke, I dressed carefully in the same black suit I'd worn to close countless business deals. Battle armor of a sort. I wasn't just Lenora the mother today. I was Lenora the survivor, the businesswoman who had overcome 3 decades of obstacles. Bradford had made a grave miscalculation. He'd seen my age as weakness my love, as blindness my trust, as vulnerability. He was about to discover just how formidable I truly was. Josephine's conference room was deliberately intimidating that morning. The long mahogany table gleamed under recessed lighting. One side held several empty chairs. The other side, my side, was occupied by Detective Rivera, an assistant district attorney named Janet Chen Michael Donovan, in his security uniform, a toxicology expert from the state lab, and Josephine herself. I sat at the head of the table, a position of power I'd earned through decades of negotiations. At precisely 9 o'clock, Bradford and Amanda were escorted in by Josephine's assistant. Their expectant expressions froze when they saw me, then morphed into confusion at the assembly of strangers. Mom Bradford recovered first, rushing forward with arms outstretched. "We've been so worried. Where have you been?" I raised one hand, stopping him before he could touch me. "Sit down, Bradford." Amanda's eyes darted around the room, assessing the situation with calculating speed. She was already backing toward the door when Detective Rivera stood and displayed his badge. "Mrs. Bradford Jefferson." "Mr. Bradford Jefferson, I'm Detective Carlos Rivera. Please take seats. We have matters to discuss regarding events at La Maison restaurant last week." The color drained from Bradford's face. Amanda's handbag slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. Neither moved until Rivera added, "I can place you both in handcuffs, if that would help clarify the seriousness of this situation." They sat mechanically, Bradford still staring at me with shocked disbelief. "Mom, what is this? What's happening?" I looked directly into the eyes of my only child, searching for any trace of the boy I'd loved. "You tell me, Bradford. What happened at La Maison? What did you put in my cranberry juice cocktail?" "This is absurd," Amanda interjected, her voice pitched higher than normal. "We were celebrating your company sale. Nothing happened to any drinks." Michael Donovan cleared his throat. "I witnessed Mr. Jefferson remove something from his pocket and pour it into Mrs. Jefferson's drink while you, Mrs. Jefferson distracted the waiter with a complaint about water spots on your glass. Amanda's face contorted. Who are you? You can't just make accusations without— He's the security guard who saved my life, I interrupted. And there's video evidence backing his account. Janet Chen, the ADA, opened a laptop and turned it to face them. This is security footage from La Maison. We've enhanced it for clarity. She pressed play. The screen showed our table from above. Brad was clearly visible removing something from his jacket, glancing around, then emptying it into my drink, while Amanda engaged the waiter in animated conversation. When the waiter moved away, Brad subtly pushed my glass closer to my place setting. Amanda recovered first. That proves nothing. He was adding a flavor enhancer. Cranberry juice is so bitter. The toxicologist, Dr. Patel, spoke up. The substance in Mrs. Jefferson's drink was not a flavor enhancer. It was a lethal combination of ethylene glycol and anticoagulants. Essentially antifreeze mixed with blood thinners. That's a lie, Bradford shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. Mom, they're trying to turn you against me. I maintained my composure, though. Inside, I was shattering. I heard you, Bradford. Outside the restaurant bathroom. You and Amanda discussing how long before it took effect. Amanda saying you needed my death to look natural so the inheritance would come through. Bradford's face went slack. Amanda's eyes hardened as she turned to him. This is your fault. I told you we should have been more careful. I told you a public restaurant was too risky. Amanda Bradford hissed, but the damage was done. Detective Rivera leaned forward. Mrs. Jefferson, are you admitting to conspiracy to commit murder? Amanda's lawyer mask slipped completely. I'm admitting nothing. But if anyone planned this, it was Brad. He's the one who knew about pharmaceutical interactions. He's the one who said his mother trusted him completely and would never suspect. That's not true, Bradford protested, his face reddening. It was your idea. You said we needed the money now that collectors were threatening you. I watched them turn on each other with sickening clarity. The love I'd thought they shared was as false as the affection they'd shown me. Enough. My voice cut through their accusations. I have one question for you, Bradford. Just one. I leaned forward, looking directly into the eyes that were so like his father's. Why I gave you everything. Love, opportunity, financial support. Why wasn't it enough? For a moment, vulnerability flickered across his face, almost like the boy I remembered. Then it hardened into something unrecognizable. Because it was always about the business, he said flatly. Never about me. You gave me things, not time. Money, not attention. The business was your real child. The accusation struck like a physical blow. Had I failed him so completely? Had my attempts to provide security been perceived as neglect? Before I could process this, Amanda scoffed. Don't play the wounded son, Brad. You've been plotting this since before we met. You told me your first week at Wharton that your retirement plan was your mother's money. The last thread of hope I'd been clinging to snapped. Bradford's resentment might have been partially my failure as a mother, but his calculation predated Amanda. She might have accelerated his plan, but the seed of betrayal had been planted long ago. Janet Chen had heard enough. Bradford and Amanda Jefferson, you're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and fraud. She nodded to two police officers waiting outside who entered with handcuffs. What followed was mechanical and surreal. Miranda rights recited, handcuffs clicked, closed, my son and his wife led away separately. Bradford looked back, once his expression unreadable. I forced myself to watch until the door closed behind him. The room emptied gradually. The toxicologist packed his evidence. Detective Rivera discussed next steps with Janet Chen. Michael Donovan offered a quiet word of sympathy before departing. Finally, only Josephine remained with me in the silent conference room. Are you all right? She asked, her professional demeanor softening into genuine concern. No, I answered honestly. I don't think I'll be all right for a very long time. But I'll survive. I always have. The legal process that followed was both grueling and mercifully efficient. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Amanda quickly offered to testify against Bradford in exchange for a reduced sentence. My son, confronted with his wife's betrayal on top of everything else, eventually accepted a plea deal. During his pre-sentencing statement, Bradford looked directly at me in the courtroom and said words, "I'll never forget, I never thought it would kill you, just make you sick enough to sign papers. I didn't want you dead, Mom. I just wanted what I thought I deserved." Even in his confession, he couldn't take full responsibility. I nodded once, acknowledging his words without accepting his justification, then watched as he was led away to begin his 8-year sentence. Amanda received 5 years with possibility of parole after 3. Investigations into her previous relationships were reopened, but I didn't follow those proceedings. Some stones are better left unturned. As the courthouse doors closed behind me that final day, I felt neither victory nor closure, only a profound emptiness where family should have been. I had survived, but at what cost? The first 6 months after Bradford's sentencing were the darkest of my life, darker even than when Thomas died, because this loss came with betrayal attached. I retreated to a small coastal home in Maine, far from Boston and its memories. There, with only the rhythm of ocean waves for company, I allowed myself to grieve. I grieved not just for the son who had tried to kill me, but for the mother I had been too focused on providing financial security, perhaps, at the expense of emotional connection. I grieved for the family I thought I had, and the lonely future I faced without it. Some days the pain was so intense I could barely breathe through it. Josephine checked in weekly, managing my legal affairs with quiet efficiency. The company that bought Jefferson Medical Supply wants to do a profile on the founder she mentioned during one call. I've declined, but they're persistent. "Keep declining," I said. The last thing I wanted was publicity. Boston newspapers had already feasted on the story: wealthy widow, ungrateful son, murderous daughter-in-law. It had all the elements of scandal they craved. The breakthrough came unexpectedly 3 months into my self-imposed isolation. A letter arrived from Marianne Bennett, a former employee I'd helped through breast cancer treatment years ago. She'd read about my situation and wrote simply, "You showed me kindness when I needed it most. Now it's my turn. When you're ready to rejoin the living, call me." That letter was the first thing that had made me cry since the arrest. Not from pain, but from the recognition that while family had failed me, humanity still held goodness. I called Marianne the next day. She invited me to a cancer survivors support group she facilitated. "You're not a cancer survivor," she acknowledged, "but trauma is trauma, Lenora. Betrayal has its own kind of recovery process." Sitting in that circle of strangers who had faced mortality, I spoke my truth aloud for the first time. My son tried to kill me for money. The words hung in the air, raw and terrible. But instead of the judgment or pity I feared, I received simple acknowledgement. These people understood that survival sometimes comes at devastating cost. That group became my lifeline. Through their stories of resilience, I began to imagine my own. If Joan could rebuild after losing a breast and her marriage in the same month, if Miguel could find joy after terminal diagnosis and miraculous remission, perhaps I too could create meaning from catastrophe. 6 months after joining the group, I established the Jefferson Foundation with a $10 million endowment. Our mission supporting elderly victims of financial exploitation and funding education about elder abuse. Statistics showed I was far from alone. Thousands of seniors were victimized by family members annually, many cases going unreported due to shame or fear. Through the foundation, I connected with other survivors of familial betrayal. Ruth, whose grandson had stolen her retirement savings. George, whose niece had manipulated him into signing over his home. Helen, whose children had medicated her to gain control of her assets. Their stories echoed mine in painful ways, but together we found strength in vulnerability. The work became my purpose. I spoke at conferences, consulted on protective legislation, funded research into prevention strategies. My business experience proved invaluable in navigating systems and advocating for change. For the first time since selling the company, I felt truly useful again. Personal healing came more slowly than professional purpose. Nightmares plagued me, Bradford's face morphing between the innocent child I'd raised and the calculating man who'd tried to kill me. Trust became a scarce commodity. Each new relationship was filtered through hard-won caution. Therapy helped, though I resisted initially. "I'm not broken." I insisted to Dr. Abrams during our first session. "I'm angry. There's a difference." "Anger is appropriate," she acknowledged, "but beneath it is grief that needs witnessing." She was right, of course. Gradually, I learned to separate Bradford's actions from my identity as a mother. His choices reflected his character, not my parenting, though I acknowledged ways I could have been more present emotionally while building the business. Some reconciliation was possible with myself, if not with him. 2 years after the arrest, I received my first letter from Bradford in prison. I left it unopened on my desk for weeks, both dreading and curious about its contents. When I finally found courage to read it, his words were neither fully apologetic nor entirely blaming, just as complicated as our relationship had always been. "I think about that night constantly," he wrote. "About how one security guard noticing one moment changed everything. I tell myself I would have stopped you from drinking it at the last minute, that it was just to scare you into signing papers. I need to believe that, even if it's not true. Amanda manipulated me, but I let myself be manipulated because I was weak and greedy. I don't expect forgiveness, Mom. I just wanted you to know that in my better moments I understand what I've done." I wrote back a single page, neither condemning nor absolving, simply acknowledging his humanity without accepting his justification. Thus began a cautious correspondence that continues to this day. I visit him once a year, brief, emotionally complex encounters that leave me drained but somehow necessary for my own closure. Amanda, I never contacted again. Some bridges cannot and should not be rebuilt. As my 70th birthday approached, I found myself reflecting on the wisdom this ordeal had forced upon me. Money, I had learned, was a powerful amplifier. It didn't change people so much as magnify who they already were. Bradford's resentment and entitlement had always existed. Wealth simply provided greater temptation to act on those flaws. I had also learned that genuine connection cannot be purchased or inherited. The relationships that sustained me through darkness were based on mutual respect and shared humanity, not blood or obligation. My survivors group, the Foundation colleagues, even Michael Donovan, who still sent holiday cards, these connections proved more reliable than family ties ever had. Perhaps most importantly, I learned to trust my instincts. The unease I'd felt about Amanda from the beginning, the discomfort with Bradford's sudden attentiveness. After the sale announcement, my subconscious had recognized danger signals. My conscious mind had dismissed out of hope and maternal love. Never again would I ignore that internal warning system. Today, 5 years after that fateful night at La Maison, I live a life that balances caution with openness. My home has excellent security, but also a garden where neighborhood children are welcome to pick flowers. I maintain careful control of my finances, but give generously to causes that matter. I protect my privacy, but share my story when it might help others avoid similar betrayal. Bradford will be eligible for parole in 3 years. I don't know if I'll support his release or what relationship might be possible afterward. Some questions have no simple answers, only ongoing reckonings with complex truths. What I do know is this surviving betrayal by those we love most deeply doesn't end us, though it may transform us irrevocably. The greatest act of self-preservation isn't just walking away from danger, it's walking toward authentic connection despite past wounds. It's building meaningful purpose from painful experience. It's acknowledging that while trust may become more cautious, it shouldn't become extinct. If you're facing betrayal from someone you love, whether family, friend, or partner, know that the path forward isn't about forgetting or even necessarily forgiving. It's about reclaiming your story from the betrayal that tried to define it. It's about creating meaning that transcends victimhood without denying the reality of what happened. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's story. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved for your own safety or well-being? How did you rebuild trust afterward? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more. Survival journeys. Remember to like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear that even the deepest betrayals can be survived with dignity and purpose. Thank you for listening to an old woman's hard-earned wisdom. Until next time, trust yourself first.